This, sadly enough, is real. In 2010, Disney Channel came out with a show by the name of Good Luck, Charlie. It became popular fast and is big with preteens and young children. It has very bland humor, but they seem to like it. But what you may not know is that the show was originally written with a much darker premise. It was 2006 and I had just finished with my 3-4 years of college and received my major in screenwriting and television production. I was very anxious to get my name out there so I could begin a hopefully lifelong career. I applied for jobs at places like Nickelodeon Studios, Orlando, and WGN, but I was rejected from several places. A little while after that though, I got a call. It was from Disney Channel Studios in Burbank, California. They called and informed me that they had an internship opening if I was interested. I was upset that it was all they wanted me for, but I agreed, realizing that it was an okay start. Hey, it could have been worse, right? Nope. Anyways, they hired me and I came out to California to start my new job. I was a third-floor intern to the company's CEO. He was demanding but hardly around, so it was easier than I expected. Sometime after I'd been hired, I heard that they had to start preparing new shows, due to the fact that Miley and the Sweet Life kids were growing up, and would soon stop being interested in doing children's shows. They needed a backup plan to fall back on. Disney Channel had called out some of the best producers to create Disney's next pointless television show. I was excited to hear this. For a little while I thought this could be my big chance to prove myself as a writer. I wanted to make a name for myself, I just didn't know how. So I gave it up and went back to my lowly internship. In mid-January of 2008, I was fetching coffee for my dictator of a boss when I noticed an open door with a Do Not Disturb sign on it. My curiosity got the best of me, and I quietly walked in. There was a waiting room, and then a main conference room, and I stood in the waiting room listening quietly against the door. As it would turn out, it was a private meeting consisting of about 25 people. I wondered what they were there for, so I continued to pay attention. A stout woman stood up and announced that the pitches would continue after a short recess. So that was it. The writers had come to pitch the new sitcom, I thought. But then I was screwed because I'd be caught. They began to exit the room one by one, and I hid in the room's bathroom. I came out and blended in as best I could, but a man saw me come out, and he assumed I was part of the creative staff. He told me I'd missed the introductory part, and I should get back in there, because his boss didn't take too kindly to tardiness. Apparently, one member of the creative staff didn't show up, and I was free to take his place and listen in on them. I was excited, obviously. I'd always wondered what goes on in those meetings for new shows. Maybe this was my start? Nope. When everyone returned to the room, two men were preparing a storyboard and writing their concept. They went by the names of Phil Baker and Drew V. I recognized the names because they worked on ABC sitcoms, but not much else. But I could see why Disney wanted them for this kind of job. They began by explaining that Disney's audience consists of young children, and they should try to appeal to older audiences. Mr. V started off by explaining the storyboard. The show was originally called Love Teddy, which you may or may not have known. We begin with Teddy Duncan. She's 16, she has it all. Popularity, a boyfriend, good grades and everything. But what happens when our bad decisions take all of that away? I felt tension in the room. I wanted to leave, but I was interested to see where this was going. One day, our little Miss Teddy is walking home after visiting a friend. She's approached by a strange older male, and he convinces her that his daughter has been harmed and needs her help. Teddy, being of kind nature, agrees to come along with him. Grave mistake. He kidnaps her and brutally beats her, eventually raping her and leaving her in the streets to die. She regains consciousness and returns home with bruises all over her face. She tells her parents, known back then as Amelia and Robert Duncan, that she has been violated and needs their help. They don't believe her and instead think she was out drinking and punish her for lying. 2 weeks later, she comes to find that she is pregnant. Devastated, she runs to her parents thinking they'll help her, but instead they become furious. But being strong Christians, they demand that she do not get an abortion. They then agree to pose as the child's biological parents, under the conditions she stay confined to the house and be homeschooled to save family from embarrassment. 9 months later, when the child, back then named Grace Duncan, is born, Teddy is heartbroken to know that her child will never know how much she truly loves her, because her parents have forbidden any close contact for Teddy and Grace. The series will focus on Teddy writing letters to her child and trying to maintain a distant relationship with Grace, while fixing the shattered remains of her life, thus explaining the title. Dear Charlie, the letters would begin. Your loving mother, Teddy, the letters would always end. He went on to further explain details regarding the series, like how Teddy's parents were both emotionally and physically abusive, or how when she returned to school her boyfriend left her for another, and everyone had forgotten her. She befriends a large African-American girl by the name of Ivy Wentz, who gets her into all sorts of trouble due to the time frame of the original show. Love, Teddy was said to take place during the 1960s, but they never mentioned where, though. There was also no mention of Teddy's two brothers, PJ and Gabe, as back then she was an only child. The series was planned to be extremely serious and much darker than anything Disney would ever dream of. The presentation had finished and I was blown away, as was the rest of the room. The head of staff, though, immediately shot down the idea and calmly asked everyone to leave. I then realized I'd forgotten the CEO's coffee, and I was caught and not long fired after that. In 2010, I went back to my hometown and got a small job writing children's educational shows for my hometown's local television station. Not great, I know. But one day, when my roommate turned on Disney Channel, I caught wind of a bumper for Good Luck Charlie and was in disbelief. I found out that the show was a cleaner version of the storyboard I saw in my internship. I called up an old friend from the studio, and he told me that Disney had picked up the show. He said that the executives and producers tweaked it so much that it was dumbed down to the average Disney levels. He went on to tell me that the original script was scrapped. However, as it turned out, Disney did in fact create the original pilot for Love, Teddy. It featured most of the current cast except for Jason Dolley and Bradley Stephen Perry, who were not included into the show until the premise was rewritten. Very few people have seen the original pilot because it was soon locked away in what is known as the vault. Pity.